Tonight on America's Hope, searching for hope in areas that are hopeless, Ukraine and Armenia. We'll tell you why. We'll be talking to two people who are very familiar and all too acquainted with the grief unfolding for the Ukrainian people and the Armenian people. That's tonight on America's Hope. Good evening, I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope. We're glad that you could join us this hour, and wherever you are, I do hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. When it comes to the Ukrainian situation, Ukraine's fighting against Russia. There is also a fight going on within Ukraine itself, and that is the persecution against the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. We're going to talk about that with Bob Amsterdam, who's an international attorney representing the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And also tonight, we'll focus on Armenians and the plight they've had to endure for years after suffering genocide, as well as going through hostilities even to this present time. We'll be talking to Lucia Moon, a woman from Armenia, and how she's helping Ukrainian and Armenian refugees. That's our story tonight on America's Hope. Let's get started. My first guest tonight is Bob Amsterdam. He is an international attorney. He has been retained by numerous sovereign governments, political parties and candidates, high net worth individuals, foreign investors, and multinational corporations. Oh, and by the way, the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, where there is a lot of turmoil going on, even in the midst of a war with Russia. He joins us now to bring us an update on I guess the best word to describe what's happening on the ground there among Christians would be persecution. Is that correct, Bob?
That barely touches what's going on. It's frightening. You know, firstly, I'll start off the way we always do, ritualistically, and say that I support the government of Ukraine in its defense of its sovereignty. But after that, I would say that what I witnessed in Ukraine is a country at war within itself. They have declared war on the 1,000-year-old home of Christ in Ukraine. I went there against a lot of advice. I went there personally with my staff. We wanted to meet with members of the Holy Synod. We wanted to meet with priests. We wanted to meet with Rada members and get a sense on the ground as to what was going on with the church. And what we found was terribly disturbing. I met a number of priests who had been beaten so badly by the secret police in Ukraine that they would never function again as priests. One father, after the meeting I held with him, his home was raided the next day, and he was dealt with so violently that he suffered a heart attack. I mean, this isn't Stalin's Russia. This is Zelensky's Ukraine, and our government and our media say nothing. We are complicit in the destruction of this church. I want to be very clear. Our government supports the destruction of the church because they believe that there is some possibility that Russia, even though the church has cut off its entire relationship with Russia, they believe there is some possibility that Russia still influences this church. And as a result of that, they have condemned the majority church in Ukraine to dissolution under a government without rule of law, under a government who applies sanctions to their enemies, under a government without a free media, under the government where the courts are managed by the secret police, under a government where the parliament has no independent say, and the leadership has to pay the parliamentarians to show up. It is a complete outrage what is going on with this church, and a tragedy. And if there are people there of any faith, I'm Jewish, if they are Christians, Jews, or Muslims, and you care about freedom of religion, say something to your priest, your rabbi, your imam. Get people talking to the Ukrainians. As I said, I'm not trying to interfere with our government's support of their war, which I agree with. But what's happened in Ukraine to this church is completely unacceptable.
Bob, that's you talk about what's happening there. It's just a stark departure from what many people here in the West understand. They understand that Ukrainians are fighting against Russia. What you're talking about,
Which they are,
right?
Which they are, and very heroically, without the right munitions that we need to supply them. That's all true.
But then there's this war within Ukraine because Ukraine has lost confidence or trust in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church because of its past ties or former relationship with the Russian Orthodox Church. Is that correct?
You know what's funny? That's actually not true.
Okay.
Because the leader of the religious part of the bureaucracy up until the end of 2022 was completely in favor of our church. What happened was, in the end of 2022, this lovely professor who ran that organization was removed. And a predatory individual named Mr. Zelensky came on board with clearly specific instructions to take down the church. And he did it because the Zelensky Yermak team decided that they wanted to appeal to the ultra-rightists and thereby destroy the church and pick up votes in Western Ukraine. This is a Tammany Hall gig. And that's what's so shameful. Everybody knows these priests have nothing to do with Russia. Heck, most of the priests I met with didn't speak Russian. And if you know Orthodoxy, this is not a church which is hierarchical. It is non-hierarchical. But they're trying to pass a bill, this Bill 8371, that's going to force our church to merge with another church that is not canonically recognized and essentially destroy our church. And this canonical recognition is a very big deal because in Orthodoxy, there is this concept of succession where the leaders of the church are deemed to be successors to the apostles. So you can't negotiate your way around canonical disputes very easily. So the government is interfering in the realm of spirituality. It's violating the Ukrainian Constitution. And it's talking about cleansing the country of this religion. It is, I can't tell you how shocked I was, how saddened I was. And as you know, I've been on the show before. You know, once you reach a certain age, let's call it 40 to be kind, churches and synagogues, they mean more to you as you get older. So on Sunday, I went to church. I decided that I was there. I was privileged to be representing this ancient institution. So I went to the churches of our church, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and the churches of the state church now, the one that Zelensky and his team are supporting, called the OCU, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which is essentially a political project set up by the politicians 4 years ago at the request, I think, of the United States to have a separate church not contaminated by Russia. So, you know, because of the United States foreign policy and Ukrainian domestic politics, we're just going to shut down this 1,000-year-old piece of Ukrainian history. The churches of the OCU, the state church, were virtually empty. The churches of our church, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, were having multiple prayer services. You know, I'm not a young guy. I was scared to go in our churches. They were unhealthily jam-packed because so many of our churches have been stolen by the other church. And if you go on my website, Save the UOC, you will see a horrific set of videos break-ins, beatings of priests on video. There's no shame to this because in Ukraine, if you criticize anything, you're pro-Putin. This is how they're running. They're even talking about now establishing a dictatorship. I mean, I cannot for the life of me understand why American media is ignoring all of this. They are buying hook, line, and sinker the idea that they have to work as propagandists, and it's shameful.